Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm reviewing a new edition of a book we've looked at before. It's from the Child Poverty Action Group, and the title of the book is Child Support Handbook 2015 to 2016. It's now in the 23rd edition and it's been revised by Mark Brough. And CPAG have come up again with, I think, an excellent book. We'll have a look at it. I've only written a short review, but do have a look at our reviews on the web and in the journals. We produce these reviews for people in the areas of concern. All the reviews of the works we do are considered to be good reviews concerning high quality publications, otherwise we don't bother to review them. Now, the title that Elizabeth and I have given this book for our written appreciation is Another Brilliant Best Friend from CPAG for all involved in welfare law. And this is, of course, child support. We'll talk about what's in the book in a short moment. This is the book. It's a paperback. There's the spine and then there's the back. You can see there's quite a lot of detail in the back and some quotes. And I'll just mention a couple of the little quotes. I particularly liked one or two of the quotes which have come. Woman's Own in particular gives a thorough explanation of the system. Now I'll repeat that a little later, but I like that particular quote. This is the book. There's the front page. And then after that you'll see there some information about Mark, who wrote the book and put it together. And then you've got the contents section there. Acknowledgements. The contents section going all the way through. You can see the logic of it. And then you do have appendices at the back, and you also have a list of abbreviations. Now you can see in the work itself there's a shaded area for the main book, and then at the back you've got the actual appendices which are there, useful addresses and so forth. We'll come on to that in a minute. Right at the back of the book you do have a useful index which I have found quite helpful, especially trying to find particular types. I think it's the wording that is the problem with this particular area of law and activity for advisors and everybody, because they do use words sometimes that we don't really quite understand. As I've indicated, there are in fact 15 chapters in total. The one that's quite interesting at the end is complaints, because again we've got to keep these people on their toes sometimes, because they do tend to be a little bit lax. Now what we've got here, this is the chapter structure, and you've got in the chapter a little bit of a short index right at the beginning which sets out what's actually in the chapter. Then you do have some numbering and subheads which are quite helpful. You can see calculations coming in straight away. And then right at the back of each chapter you do have notes which go specifically to the relevant articles, the relevant rules, the relevant schedules and everything else. I've got to be relatively vague about that, but again you can see this is actually on variation of the 2012 rules, but you can see again that it is actually all about regulations. So it's secondary legislation that we are looking at. Collection and enforcement, payment of child support. And then right at the back, as I say, we have a relatively short piece of information concerning complaints. It's not a particularly big chapter. Using an MP and complaining to the Ombudsman, those are important areas. Then useful addresses, statutes, appendices, useful publications and so forth. The book runs to 370 pages, something like that, 360 pages. It's a light, practical book. I would expect to see it certainly in all Citizens Advice Bureau offices. It should be available in the library for you as well. And it is a book which is actually relatively, once you get to know how to use it, relatively straightforward to use. Now I'm going to mention a little bit about the content in our review, because what I've said here is the Child Poverty Action Group offer welfare lawyers and advisors another superb and comprehensive guide to the child support scheme, and that's exactly what you've got with this new edition, the 23rd edition. It's new for 2015 to 16, and I think we will be getting are rolling out now on a yearly basis at the moment. And this particular edition gives practical examples throughout, which I think are very helpful, and it also gives clear guidance for any person who is involved in advising parents on child maintenance issues. And we know that users will find this title to be another invaluable hands-on work from the Child Poverty Action Group because it's both spot on and cost effective in terms of its price for its wide audience, because this is not a book that is very, very small area of people who are involved, but a much wider area. So I think it is important for people to know of its existence and that this is one of the better works on the market, which will explain to you effectively how the scheme operates and what you can do if you are in a position where you do need some assistance and support. So the Child Support Handbook itself sets out to answer a number of basic questions, and these are such as who can apply for maintenance, who has to pay, how to apply and how to withdraw an application, and how maintenance is calculated. Those are the main core issues of the book. As I've indicated, if you're not happy with the system, it gives you some idea of the type of redress you might be able to get. Although don't be fooled, as many people are, that if you do make a complaint of some sort, that it will be actioned, because sometimes you've really got to be quite dedicated and thorough in order to pursue matters when clearly something has not worked in the system. Now, I may be critical of the system, but it's one of the best in the world, and it's the best country we live in the world. So whilst we've got this particular scheme, for whatever problems it may have, the fact is that it is an excellent part of our welfare state, and that's what we should have in any civilised society. The book is actually surprisingly detailed. As I've indicated, a lot of the secondary legislation, that's the rules and regulations and so forth, are covered in very great detail, and it explains the following specific areas, which are some of the most common points which we as advisors are called upon to answer. And the issues include: how do you apply for child support? What powers do the Child Support Agency and the Child Maintenance Service have? How is the amount of child support calculated under the different statutory schemes? When will your case be transferred to the new rules that are coming in? How do you challenge a child support decision? What happens if you fail to make or pay child support? And how can you challenge a decision or make a complaint? So I'd like to have seen a bit more on that at the back, because as I've indicated earlier, complaints are quite important because it keeps people on their toes. And in this area of law, you can get complacency setting in. So it is important, because I'm well aware that many MPs have a very heavy postbag in this particular area from constituents. So I think it's something that you should be aware of as someone listening to what I'm saying and reading the book. Let me conclude by saying that Mark Brough has updated the handbook to cover the latest changes to child support in a most accessible way, and the 2015 to 16 edition remains fully indexed and cross-referenced to the relevant legislation, to the case law authorities and the official guidance. That of course includes all of the regulations, and it also includes practical examples, tactical hints and useful arguments in what has been described as a well-written, fantastically detailed and very accurate statement for which there is no better source of information and advice. And I think that little statement, which I have borrowed from one of the comments, I think does sum up the book pretty well. And it gives, of course, both a thorough and a refreshing explanation of how the system works, which I've indicated earlier. That's another point that has been made. And I did find both of those observations very, very apposite, if I can put it that way. So thank you, CPAG, for making our task as advisors so much easier. This handbook does help. And the law is as stated on the 1st of June 2015. This is the book again. There it is. That's the front, the spine, and then the side, the side, and then the back. And as I say, some of the quotes I've taken from there. It's useful to know that, because these people who have written quotes mean it, and it does actually make a great deal of difference. Now, can I just talk about the various rules? I'm not going into a lot of detail, but part 5 of the actual handbook looks at the 1993 rules in some details. It's the introduction, the 5 steps of the formula, and so forth, which are all listed there. If we go to the front of the book, just so you've got some idea about how to navigate it, you'll see the structure, the various chapter headings. That was chapter 5, which is on the, as I say, the 2003 rules. And from there, the book is actually split into various parts and chapters, but it then goes on from there to the variations. It looks at some of the earlier rules as well. Then we get on from that, in fact going back to the 1993 rules. Then what we have got are the various procedural aspects of how the thing actually operates from it's part 6 onwards, which is called decisions, challenges and enforcement. Then it runs all the way through from there for chapter 11, decisions, revisions and supersessions, appeals, collection and enforcement, and finally complaints at the bottom. So you've got some idea, I hope, of how to navigate this reasonably easily. Excuse me. Anyway, thank you very much to CPAG and Mark Brough for another excellent book, which is a great help to everybody. So if you've got a problem in this area, this is really your best friend. Thank you anyway to all. Bye-bye.